Tonight, Venezuela's leader behind bars in the U.S., raising stark legal questions. New images of Nicolas Maduro in custody as Trump's team defends the operation.
There's not a war. We are at war against drug trafficking organizations, not a war against Venezuela.
Plus, jubilation and condemnation, how Canadians are reacting.
The greatest day of my life.
It's an outrageous violation of Venezuela's sovereignty.
A moving memorial in Switzerland. What we're learning about the victims, now all identified. And so much sports.
Oh, Canada! Oh, congratulations!
Why 2026 is set to be a banner here in sports, what you need to mark on your calendar.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. The people of Venezuela are now bracing for what comes next following the U.S. attack on the country and capture of its leader. Nicolas Maduro is in a federal prison in Brooklyn, set to answer charges in court tomorrow. And late tonight, President Donald Trump talking about the operation and the need to take over Venezuela, suggesting he's not done.
We're going to run it, fix it. We'll have elections at the right time. But the main thing you have to fix, it's a broken country. There's no money. There's inflation. Colombia is very sick, too, run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States. And he's not going to be doing it very long, let me tell you.
What does that mean? He's not going to be doing it very long?
He's not doing it very long. He has cocaine mills and cocaine factories. He's not going to be doing it very long.
So there will be an operation by the U.S. and
It sounds good to me.
Donald Trump also putting Mexico and Cuba on notice, naming them as countries of concern. But Venezuela remains the nation at the center of it all tonight. We have extensive coverage of this story, including how Canadians are reacting. We begin with CTV's Kamal Kramali.
Do you miss him?
Of course. All the time.
This is the moment Igor Marin has been waiting for, a spark of hope that his brother could soon be free.
Well, keep the hopes high. He will be released, hopefully, really soon.
Egbert Marin, a high-ranking military official in Venezuela, jailed when he spoke out against the current government, says his brother. But after a pre-dawn military strike Saturday that saw the U.S. abduct Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and take him into custody at a New York City detention center, faith restored for this Canadian family that all political prisoners back home could be released.
Back to the real life, to the normal life under the rule of law.
But that could be years away. Today, Venezuela's government meeting the U.S. with defiance, recognizing Vice President Delcy Rodriguez as Venezuela's acting president. U.S. President Donald Trump has said the U.S. will run Venezuela, but today, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio appearing to soften on that stance.
Are you running Venezuela right now?
Here's the bottom line on it is we expect to see changes in Venezuela.
Changes, but how soon? These images from the devastating aftermath, Venezuelan officials claim dozens of military personnel and civilians were killed in the attack. The U.S. has said it's not at war, but will continue to block oil tankers from leaving Venezuela. If the U.S. seizes full control of the country's massive oil reserves, like Trump indicated, it could possibly be felt even in Canada if the U.S. chooses to shift to cheaper Venezuelan crude.
Could mean a flood of new oil, which could undermine prices, and that certainly could undermine the output.
Although no fan of Maduro, Canadians with family in Venezuela worry the U.S. doesn't have their best interests at heart either.
Do you think they really care about the Venezuelan people?
No, that's a very clear answer. No. That brings a lot of stress and concern personally to me and to my family.
The United Nations Security Council now set to meet tomorrow after calling the U.S. attack a dangerous precedent, while Maduro also expected to make his appearance in federal court Monday. Heather.
CTV's Kamal Kramali in Toronto. Kamal, thank you. Prime Minister Mark Carney is among the chorus of world leaders weighing in on the U.S. operation in Venezuela. Carney released a statement Saturday in the wake of Maduro's capture that said, in part, Canada has not recognized the illegitimate regime of Maduro since it stole the 2018 election. The Canadian government therefore welcomes the opportunity for freedom, democracy, peace and prosperity for the Venezuelan people. The Prime Minister also adding Canada calls on all parties to respect international law. There are voices speaking out tonight, though, who feel Mark Carney's statement wasn't strong enough.
I was very disappointed. I think we're witnessing an act of imperialism taking place in our own hemisphere. And this is not something that's thousands of kilometers away. We live next door to Donald Trump, who's now basically made it very clear that he runs the hemisphere. He will do what he wants.
The U.S. capture of Maduro from Venezuela, not only controversial, but also sparking many legal questions, particularly since the Trump administration has framed the operation as a move to nab a fugitive from justice.
President Trump completely undermined that rationale at yesterday's press conference. So Secretary Rubio did a really nice job in explaining all we were doing, he said, was seeking extradition of a felon. But if that were true, the moment that Maduro was apprehended, and he has been apprehended, and he's now in custody in New York, then that action should have ended. But instead, President Trump went on national television and told the world that now we're going to run the country of Venezuela. You can't square that in any way with the idea that this was merely law enforcement action.
World reaction to the U.S. operation has been swift and sharply divided. In Spain, supporters of Venezuela waved flags and sang to celebrate the ouster of Maduro, who many believe stole the presidency. Meanwhile, demonstrators in India staged protests in New Delhi and other cities to condemn the U.S. strike as illegal and a violation of Venezuela's sovereignty. Canadians reacted in large numbers with rallies across the country, raising questions about how developments in South America could impact our future relations with the U.S. and possibly spark an increase in Venezuelan refugees. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth reports.
He has also threatened Colombia. More than 100 people gathered in Halifax to show support for Venezuelan sovereignty.
I'm here today to denounce the role that U.S. imperialism, and actually more broadly, Western imperialism is playing.
But the anti-U.S. sentiment was not unanimous.
I came for a reason.
This rally was interrupted by a Venezuelan immigrant who came to Canada in 2006.
Yesterday was the greatest day of my life. I only got 1 hour sleep and I was so happy.
There were numerous similar public gatherings across the country, including in Ottawa and Winnipeg.
If Canada supports international law, then it must demand that President Maduro be repatriated back to Venezuela because he is the president of that country.
The U.S. operation against Venezuela has resulted in a wave of Canadian reaction.
I'm not raising alarm bells recklessly.
Mount St. Vincent University political science professor Jeff McLeod says it's a wake-up call on how U.S. President Donald Trump's foreign policy could impact other countries.
He's talked about annexing Canada, Greenland, and so many things that it's hard to recall them all. So when a president of the United States muses about taking unilateral action that could impact the sovereignty of any country, you have to take that seriously.
Beyond the immediate geopolitical implications, there are also mounting concerns this action by the U.S. could further worsen the Venezuelan refugee crisis.
You will see a continued pressure for outmigration from that country.
Dalhousie University professor Robert Hewish says for now, most Venezuelan refugees migrate to nearby countries.
Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Brazil.
But according to Hewish, if the U.S. tries to organize a government in Venezuela, that could spark an increase in refugees attempting to flee away from the region and to Canada instead in the near future. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
As we mentioned earlier, Nicolas Maduro is set to appear tomorrow before a U.S. judge for the first time, facing drug and weapons charges. Maduro is expected to appear in a New York courtroom Monday at noon. A Justice Department indictment is accusing him of running a corrupt, illegitimate government financed by drug trafficking that pours thousands of tons of cocaine into the U.S. Among the charges he's facing, narcoterrorism, conspiracy, and possession of machine guns and destructive devices. A tense calm hangs over Venezuela after the U.S. military operation that removed Maduro. For more on the fallout, we are joined by Peter MacKay, former Foreign Affairs Minister under Stephen Harper. Mr. MacKay, what was the very first thought that went through your mind when you first saw the news?
Well, it was a stunning and precise military operation that we are seeing unfold now and having lots of knock-on effects in different parts of the world, including here in Canada. And so the fact that it happened so quickly and the consequential impacts are clear as Venezuelans in the country and around the world are celebrating the removal of their dictator.
What are the possible immediate repercussions on the global stage and for Canada?
Well, I think many other countries, including adversaries like Iran, Russia, China, are watching this with great interest. And those consequential replies are yet to be heard. I know that this is a situation that will affect the oil that has been making its way into various markets. Of course, Russia has been working with Venezuela to go around sanctions. And so that's one immediate impact that we know is going to happen quickly. And of course, the transition to democracy is what is on the mind of everyone.
And of course, this week, Prime Minister Mark Carney heads to Paris to discuss security guarantees for Ukraine. So what extent will Venezuela be part of or likely dominate that discussion?
Oh, I think there's no question that what happened in Venezuela in the last few days will impact the discussions. It will impact Russia, as I said, because they've lost one of those safety valves to try to get oil into the market to fund their illegal invasion of Ukraine. But the discussion happening there will be very much driven by the Americans, by the president. And I think that the countries being there demonstrating support is, of course, important. But we have seen that the United States are not hesitant to act unilaterally. And, the oil impact, of course, I mentioned already, that remains a very, very big factor in how long Russia can sustain this war against Ukraine.
Peter MacKay, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, thanks for your time. Concerns this could be replicated in other countries is growing, particularly in light of a social media post that's left many shocked. Katie Miller, wife of Donald Trump's Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, posted this image to X. It shows Greenland covered with an American flag and the message, "Soon." Greenland's Prime Minister has called the post disrespectful. An emotional day in Switzerland where hundreds turned out for a moving memorial honoring the dozens killed in a New Year's ski resort bar fire. So many people turned out for the memorial mass. The crowd spilled from the church and into the street. The service came as investigators confirmed they have now identified all 40 victims, including several teenagers who were as young as 14. It's believed the flames were caused by sparklers in champagne bottles that were held too high, lighting the ceiling on fire. The bar's 2 managers are now under investigation for negligent homicide. Ontario government employees will be back in the office 5 days a week starting tomorrow as the province ends hybrid work arrangements in place since the pandemic.
Something 50-50 or 60-40 so that they have that work-life balance and still getting the job done.
My heart's with them because it's been difficult for a lot of people after they become used to spending time in a way where sometimes they're at home, sometimes they're at work.
Public service workers in Alberta are also returning to full-time in-office work in February. Several other provinces, as well as the federal government, are reviewing their policies. Coming up, the new year begins with a sea of red ink.
We are only beginning now our long-term planning for our first budget in 2026.
The province is expecting to run a deficit and what it means for the future of Canada. Canada's economy has suffered over the last months thanks to the trade war with the U.S. Finance ministers across the country have been dealing with economic turmoil, with most provinces projecting a deficit. And as CTV's Garrett Berry reports, some analysts say there are other problems lurking around the corner.
Newfoundland and Labrador is set to run a deficit of nearly $1 billion this year. Numbers released in this week's budget update paint a picture the finance minister admits is deeply troubling. But the recently elected government says it is still committed to some election promises, like a big tax cut.
We are only beginning now our long-term planning for our first budget in 2026. Everything else will be looked at, but we are focused on our 3 priorities.
And while the province's deficit has become one of the biggest in the country per person, there's plenty of company in the red. Every province is expecting to run a deficit for the first time since 2010. Analysts say the trade war with the United States has only hurt.
Very severe tariffs on that if we have to.
But other long-term pressures lurk just around the corner, like a rapidly aging population, which needs more healthcare and social services. That was a factor in Newfoundland and Labrador, where healthcare spending unexpectedly jumped an extra $430 million this year. Alex Lauren of the CD Howe think tank says don't expect Ottawa to come in to the rescue, not when Prime Minister Mark Carney has his own deficit concerns and has committed billions more to defense spending.
Maybe the opposite will happen. The pressure will likely be federal government will need to find solution to, limit its exposure to the provincial problems.
He doesn't believe the balanced budget is gone forever, but it will take a renewed focus on growing the economy and long-term problem solving before they come back in style across the country. Garrett Berry, CTV News, St. John's.
Still ahead, a big year for sports fans. What to watch for in 2026 as Canadian athletes look for their moment of glory. Plenty to look forward to in the world of sports in 2026. From the Olympics to the World Cup to the World Series, fans across Canada are hoping for a shot to win big. CTV's chief anchor Omar Sachedina sat down with TSN's James Duffy for a preview.
James, thanks so much for being here. It has been such an incredible year for Canadian sports and Canadian athletes, and we're hoping it's the same for next year. It's going to be quite busy then, too. Walk us through the major events of next year, starting with the Olympics, this historic rivalry between Canada and the U.S. with the men's and women's hockey. Right. What are you going to be watching out for?
I just can't wait for the hockey. I think this is the most anticipated hockey tournament on the men's side since 2010, and we all know what happened then. The fact that we haven't seen Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar play in Olympic Games will be spectacular. On the women's side, I think what makes this interesting is for the first time, maybe ever, Canada is a decisive underdog to the Americans. The Americans played a rivalry series with Canada in December and destroyed them. And so that's the big challenge for the Canadians. If it gets to a gold medal game, can they upset the Americans, which is something we've never really had to say before.
Yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed for that. The other big sporting event, of course, is FIFA that's going to be coming up.
Right.
What are Canada's chances?
Well, the draw went okay. So I think it would be a success to get out of the group. In 2022, I think it was a success, Canada just getting back to the World Cup after a 30-year absence. So getting out of the group with 48 teams this year instead of 32 is very realistic. I think Canada would love to do better. If they could somehow win their group, then there would be a real path to them getting to the quarterfinals. They would stay in Vancouver for the round of 32, then stay in Vancouver again in the round of 16. So if they could win the group, a real chance to do something special. If they don't, it's a much tougher path.
And lastly, the game that everybody, whether you're a baseball fan or not, was tracking this year, it seemed like, was baseball, of course, and the World Series. It was really, something that galvanized the entire country, right? From coast to coast to coast. There was a euphoria. And then there was that crushing Game 7 loss that people are still talking about.
Right.
But the Jays still did tremendously well. Can they repeat their success in 2026?
Yeah, no. And I was with everybody else. I was at Game 6 and 7. I don't get to go to a lot of games as a fan. And I was screaming, yelling like everybody else and living and dying with every single pitch. I think they can. The big change that's happened is for years the Jays weren't very good and they would never outspend the Yankees and the Red Sox in their division, so they never really had a chance. But now the Jays have become as big a spender as anybody else out there. So they're going to put a really good team on the field. Certain things have to happen. It was such a magical year. Guys like Addison Barger and Ernie Clement have to repeat the things. Trey Savage, who had such a special playoffs, has to show he can do that over a long season. So a lot of things have to go well, but I think they're in a position with this roster that they could really make a run again, not just next year, but maybe over a 2-3 year window.
All right, James Duthie, I know you don't sleep much, and probably 2026 won't be much sleep either, but I'm looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks, and happy holidays to you and your family.
Thanks so much. Happy holidays to you as well.
Still ahead, we'll introduce you to a young Canadian bartender who took her shot among the best in the world. Canada has a new reason to raise a toast. A Montreal bartender has been named the ultimate bartender champion, beating out competition from North, South, and Central America. Christine Long finds out how she did it.
So it's like a nice little boozy wake up.
Bartender Marie-Louise Roy-Bilodeau likes making custom cocktails, like this riff on a Negroni she nicknames a Monday morning.
I just like making something that my guests will enjoy.
She's been bartending 4 years and was encouraged by a boss to compete professionally, so she gave it a shot.
This year, I applied to do the Ultimate Bartender Championship. I won the Canadian leg, and that brought me all the way to Colombia for the final for North, South, and Central America. And I won that one.
The only woman in the finals, Roy-Bilodeau, who is 27, says that the all-day competition included mixology, serving, and speed.
Their premise was skills pay the bills. So they created a bunch of challenges to test your day-to-day skills.
Day-to-day skills she's been perfecting at La Cantina Concha.
You had 5 drinks to make and a shot to pour as fast as you could.
Now named the Ultimate Bartender Champion, Roy-Bilodeau earned a retro varsity jacket, a big ring, and bragging rights that her boss is enjoying.
My boss has been like telling people sometimes, like we'll get customers and she'll be like, "Do you know that she's the best in the world?" I'm like, "Whoa, let's chill."
She jokes her Ultimate Bartender Champion title only includes North, South, and Central America. A real world championship just might be in her mix for 2026. Christine Long, CTV News.
That is our newscast for this Sunday. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Omar and Sandy are back tomorrow, and I'll see you again on Friday. Good night.